Okay, we're live.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Niamh Hartnett-Merluccio, and I'm the co-chair of BOLD, along with Leah Gravier. And if anyone is ever interested in joining our committee, we are always welcoming new members. So we're really just delighted to host this event this evening. And Aaron Kind, who is our Director of Counselling Services here at the Bronxville School, he will be our moderator. Aaron works with our students in grades 9 to 12 and offers counselling services in all aspects of high school life. Course selection, supporting students' well-being, and of course, college admissions counseling. You will also be hearing from our high school psychologist, Lauren Keschner, who will speak about annual testing and what information a student will need to advocate for themselves in college. We will also have the parents on our panel will be myself and Vanessa O'Friel, who will share valuable information with us also, as she has two children who've gone through this process. So this is we will share with you what we feel would be helpful. And we're also thrilled to have three recent graduates with us this evening from the Bronxville School who received accommodations, and we're going to hear about their post-high school transitions. So we have Katie Fermata, who attends Villanova, Sophia Mercado, who attends NYU, and Kian Merluccio, who attends Iona University. So Aaron, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. We appreciate the flexibility given the weather. I hope everybody is warm and dry. Happy New Year to all of you as well. So Lauren and I are going to start. You're just going to bear with me while I share some slides here that should be up on my screen. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay. So I think, the goal for us tonight is to hear about some of the differences between high school accommodations and college accommodations, how you go about getting accommodations in college. And as Niamh alluded to, hear from some students about their experience, and then obviously some parents about sort of their role in helping their child think about college placement and what types of services that they need to pursue when they get to college. Obviously I can't see everybody, but for those students that are on the call or possibly listening, this may or may not come to a shock to you, but the differences between high school or college are vast in so many different aspects. But for the purposes of tonight, we're really just going to focus on your accommodations and your 504 IEP plan. So as you all know that have a 504 or an IEP plan, in the high school, you have a team supporting you. You have a counselor. You may or may not have a special education teacher. You have your general classroom teachers, and you have, Lauren Keschner, the high school psychologist. And all of us on a yearly basis, and obviously your parents, and all of us on a yearly basis get together and review that plan and make tweaks to that plan and make sure that you're getting the support that you need to be successful in the classroom. And that word successful is a big differentiator, which you'll see on the next slide, that's important to keep in mind, because when you get to college, some of those layers of support as it relates to your accommodations fall away. And on one hand, that's a good thing because you're getting older and the sort of idea and the goal is for you to be able to navigate by yourself. But the other part of that is that it can be difficult to speak to your professors about your grades or advocate for yourself to get extended time or something to that effect. So when you start to think about applying to college and researching colleges, you definitely want to make sure that you understand what support is out there for you on different college campuses, because some college campuses have a tremendous level of support and some college campuses have less support. And you want to definitely understand your role in that process. And I think, when we get to the students after these slides, you'll hear from them how they go about navigating that. So as I mentioned, the success is a big piece in high school, right? Your accommodations are in place to ideally make sure that you're more successful in the classroom. Whereas when you get to college, your accommodations are in place to make sure you have access to and an equal opportunity to the curriculum. So it's not an annual review about what can we do better next year or what services do you need next year. It's really just like, are we meeting your needs? And I think that's a really big differentiating piece and probably like the one of the biggest gaps that you'll experience as a student going from high school to college when you're looking to get your accommodations fulfilled. Sorry. So as I mentioned, there's different levels of support. There are schools out there that have learning support programs. So this would be very similar to the high school resource room or consultant teacher model. So you have a dedicated staff member in this learning support program that is your resource room teacher, to use a high school terminology. You would go to those meetings once or twice a week. They would check in with you about upcoming assignments. They would potentially schedule sessions with tutors for math or English or whatever, academic subject area that you need support with. These programs are, I would say in some ways are like a little few and far between. It's not common, but they're out there. There are a number, as you can see, that are quite close to us and local. And these schools specifically that are on the screen have been doing this type of work for quite some time. So I would say it's quite well run and quite well organized. And then to get into these programs, it's kind of like a two-stage process. One, you have to get into admission, through the general admissions process. And then two, as you can see, there's a separate application for many of these programs on these college campuses. That also comes with an interview and supporting documents that are separate from your college application. And then on top of that, there's a fee that goes with getting these services. And I do believe that the goal here, as it is in high school, is for students to at some point, transition out of these programs. So it's not that you're going to be in this learning support program at Manhattanville for all 4 years. You definitely can be, but the goal is to work towards building that independence as a college student on your own. Similarly to a resource room or a consultant teacher model where, for those of you on the call that have younger students, you'll hear in our annual review that we often sort of like phase down or stage down support throughout the years as you get older, with the goal at possibly in senior year not having the support of a resource room or a consultant teacher. So that would be like the highest level support you can receive at a college. And from there, it really goes to just like basic accommodations being provided to a student at any institution, which would go through often like the Office of Disability Services. And you'll hear a little bit more from the students about how they go about securing those accommodations. And you'll also hear from Lauren, I think right now, about how you go about requesting them as a matriculating student.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Keschner. I'm the new high school psychologist. Thank you for being here tonight. So thank you, Erin, for that introduction. I will now talk about how our seniors can apply for their college accommodations. So as Erin stated, and as you all probably know, during a student's K through 12 experience, if they need, right, if they have those individualized needs that require an IEP or a 504 plan, that's what they receive throughout their Bronxville experience. However, IEPs and 504 plans do not exist in the post-secondary education. However, colleges are legally required to provide accommodations for students with disabilities. The process looks different, so students must self-identify that they are a student with a disability. And the disabilities office. The name is different depending on the school. However, each university or college has their own specific office. So that takes place after the student enrolls in their college. We recommend that they register as early as possible. You'll hear different experiences of when students decided to enroll for their accommodations, but we really recommend that this is all situated prior to starting in the fall so that the student is ready to go with what they require come first semester. So once your student knows where they're applying to college or where they're admitted and where they're enrolling, it's important to, on their website, look for that disability service office. You'll probably or definitely find it on the university's website. So you can request the accommodations by following the specific university's procedures. It differs depending on the university. However, it typically requires a registration form as well as uploading necessary documentation. The documentation remains confidential between the student and the Office of Disabilities. So teachers will not have access to the documentation that the student uploads. And typically, the office and the student will meet to discuss what the student needs, and the student's narrative and their perspective is really honored in the process. So different types of accommodations that colleges can provide include classroom and testing accommodations, such as extended time, separate location, use of a computer, assistive technology. Colleges can also provide housing accommodations depending on a student's needs. So students can apply for wheelchair accessible dorm room, a ground floor dorm room close to the bathroom, depending on their needs and depending on the documentation. Some schools also offer dining accommodations. So if there are dietary restrictions or allergies, some colleges meet with the student to make a personalized dietary plan to meet their needs. And so once you apply for the accommodations, it's really on the university or the college to decide what the student requires. So you may apply for 5 accommodations and they may grant 3, depending on the documentation and depending on the needs. Other services that the university can provide are tutoring, mental health counseling, academic advising, and health services. So we want to provide you an example. So we are looking at Bucknell University and their registration process to get accommodation. So their office is called the Office of Accessibility Resources, OAR. So the first step that the student will do is, again, once they are enrolled as a matriculated student, they will complete this request form. So Erin, if you can click on the form so we can quickly look at it. So this is basic information. So they are asking for the student to describe their disability. So that's where the student would put kind of their condition. So whether that's anxiety, ADHD, learning disability, depression, that's where they describe what's going on, how it affects the student in and out of class, and the accommodations that they're requesting. Colleges really look to see how the disability is impacting them academically. And then they also ask if you've previously used accommodations at school. So if you click the yes button, Erin, they ask you what you have previously used and when you last used it. So that's where you would put that you had or that your student had a 504 IEP and what accommodations were on their plan. And then you can, of course, upload additional documentation. So it's a pretty straightforward process. We typically have students get what they apply for. So I know it's a little overwhelming, but it's pretty smooth sailing, and we are here to help you throughout it. So at Bucknell, once the student submits the request form, they wait to get an email from the office, and then they schedule a meeting with the office as well to determine what accommodations they agree to grant. So along with that initial registration form or that initial request form, colleges do require typically supporting documentation. The documentation requirements vary based on the university or the college. So students must check what they need online. They should call or email the disability office at their specific school to clarify the requirements. We recommend that your student does this as soon as they know where they are going. So even prior to completing the registration form, getting all the information that you need so that they can be organized and ready to go. So examples of additional documentation are most schools honor and look at a recent IEP or 504 plan to see that there's history of a need and to see that there's educational impact and what the student has been accessing in high school specifically. So you can reach out to me or a counselor to get the last version of the IEP or 504 to upload. Some schools require supplemental documentation by a qualified professional who can speak about a diagnosis and the impact. And a few require psychoeducational a psychoeducational evaluation. What's needed is really school dependent. And it's also dependent on your student, kind of their diagnosis, and what they are requesting. But again, typically an IEP or 504 is honored, and then we are here to help with any supplemental documentation. So the process is college dependent, as I just said. So students must check online regarding what they need. Once they are admitted and once they know where they're going, they are responsible for identifying themselves as a student with a disability and submitting appropriate paperwork. So have them reach out to me to get their last version of their IEP or 504 plan. Again, in college, what they will get is not called an IEP or 504 plan, but the colleges do look to see that there's a history and that they had it in high school. If needed for that additional documentation, a student's outside provider, such as a therapist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, can help to complete the additional documentation. It differs on the college. Some colleges want a diagnosis letter, others want the practitioner to complete a supplemental form. It depends on the college, and it's always listed on their website under the office. If needed, we can also help to complete those forms and documentations. And if your college requires updated testing, which a few do, we are happy to complete that during the student's senior year. The quicker we know about it, the easier it is for the process. So just timely communication with us is appreciated, and we're here to support both you and your student through the process.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lauren. So I saw Neve mentioned if anybody has any questions, just please put them in the chat. I'm going to sort of pivot to the students, but if people have questions about anything Lauren and I discussed, please put them in the chat. We will send out the slides. We'll figure out how to get you the slides, in the coming days. But now to the students. It's so nice to see you all. I don't even know where to begin, but let's begin in the beginning. So let's take you back to senior year of high school, or maybe junior year of high school. Kian, since you're the closest to that, we're going to start with you. When you were thinking about college, like what role or what thoughts did you have about the services you had in high school and how that was going to translate to college? Was that something like that was on your mind, or were you just about going to visit and getting fast food on the way?
Well, mainly because of most colleges will accept most of my like IEP or 504. I didn't have really complicated ones. I like extra and calculator. Most of the colleges will accept it, so I didn't bother with it. I always think about what colleges I like, what is my most preferred college, and like mostly visiting.
Okay. Sophia, I think you're next youngest. What about you? When you got back to school, what were you thinking about when it came to college and just the support you had in high school? What were your thoughts around where you should go to college or what type of support you should have in college?
Well, I first looked for schools location wise and visiting campuses, but then I would look into if they would have support and they would be able to like take my accommodations, which is just like extra time. I think was one of the ones, and I never like came across a school that didn't accept it or was not going to be able to.
So when you went to visit schools, like you sought out or your parents made you seek out those specific offices just to be able to
Yeah, or
speak to
you just
somebody
like
there?
ask on the tour. Like whenever I was on a tour, you just like ask the tour guide and they usually know. If not, the answers are online. You can just like Google it. And like even on the college website, they have those answers.
Cool. And then I guess lastly, Katie, what about you? Taking you back many, many years.
Yes, when I was on tours, it definitely was important for me to look at the resources and I definitely knew that having my accommodations in college was definitely something that I was really looking for because it definitely helped me throughout high school and I knew that it was going to be something that would help me succeed throughout college. So when on tours, that was definitely something that I asked or looked to see if they spoke about it. If not, then possibly I would ask a question about it. But if the tour guide was unaware, definitely like Sophia said, doing research about it, I think is important. And besides accommodations, I think also just looking at the resources that colleges have on campus as well, like having a writing center, a math center, student centers. I think that that is also really important because that's another really important element that can be really helpful for a student's academic career.
Yeah, very good point. Also, something that I should mention that often comes up, in the counseling department from parents or students is a student or a parent will ask, like, do they have to share in advance my child's disability or, inform the school during admissions? And you don't. This is your private health information. Nobody is asking you if you're going to be applying for accommodations during the application process. The only time that you would have to indicate that is if you're applying to one of these support programs. Having said that, often that a student will write about their disability, or maybe I should say their perseverance through their disability during like a college essay or part of their application. So it will naturally come up, but it's by no means held against you or are you discriminated against for sharing this information. Quite frankly, if anything, it's like something to be applauded. And colleges, frankly, have said just that to me about a student who shared a thing or two about how much they've grown or how much they've overcome. Okay, so through the process, it was top of mind. You guys went to make sure everything was okay, more or less. And then I guess, all right, so you get into your school, you pay the deposit, and then we'll start with Sophia. Why don't you tell us about your experience, I guess as the first semester or first year? Why don't you just share like how things unfolded for you?
Okay, so I did my first entire year abroad, and I think that being abroad or being on the main campus doesn't really make a difference. Like my school still cared about my accommodations and the professors were really understanding. I forgot to do my application for the upcoming semester and I didn't have accommodations, which like honestly regret doing because they're there to help me and like not having them I think just like stressed like the semester out and wasn't as helpful as it could have been. But basically for my school at least you have to like apply every semester because for different classes the professor like gets informed of like different things. So you just like send in what classes you're doing to a certain email like a like a emailing center and then they they'll give you the accommodations if your test is like up to date and everything is okay. Which I'm pretty sure last time I was there, like Bronxville allowed me to take the test and like gave me the resources. So I was all good with that. But yeah, resubmit it. Don't forget, put like an alarm on your phone or a reminder because when it's not there, it affects you more than if it's there. Like having it there, and even if you don't use it, it's better than just like not having it at all because obviously it helps a lot and it does like, I don't know. It's good for your classes and the professors are really understanding. I haven't ran into any issues with any of my professors.
So can you talk a little bit, and I'm going to ask each of you maybe in a second, but just since you're on, Sophia, could you talk a little bit about like the logistics when you obviously have them in place? So like, so it's the start of the year, everything's set up. Like, how do you tell Professor, Aaron that I have extra time on this test, or like, what's the mechanics of the whole thing?
The professors are advised beforehand, but if you'd like to just like, I suggest this to anyone, like, your classes are going to be pretty big, even if they're small, but like kind of going up to the professor and saying, hi, my name is whatever, and saying I have a 504 plan or I get extra time on assignments, then they know to keep an eye out for you. And they also know your name because professors don't even remember what they did yesterday. So like having a name and a face is good because they're usually given a list, but those are just like random things for them. It's also very much like you're in charge of it. You have to know what you do have, what you don't have. So when you go up to the professor, be sure to have like all of your information in place and knowing and just like putting a name to the face, I guess. And they're accepting of it. I haven't ran into any issues, as I said before. And yeah, I think that's at least for my school. That I don't know if every
Yeah.
single school does that, but go up to the professor on the first day after class. Don't do it before class, do it after class, and tell them what you have, how it's going to affect the test because every professor is different and they have different like exams and how they want to seek out their exams.
Yeah, that's actually great advice. Kian, we'll turn it over to you. What happened for you after, you submitted your documentation? Did you have a meeting with the people at Iona? Like, tell us a little bit about getting the accommodations in place.
After I submit my accommodations, I go on the app and I request them because they get a lot of accommodations since Iona has a lot of people who need accommodations. After I submit it, I schedule a meeting and they just discuss my accommodations with me. There's usually 2 of them, so it's pretty easy. I got all of mine accepted and it was, just easy.
That's great. And then when it comes time to take a test or, like use your accommodations, is there anything you specifically have to do?
I just have to tell my professor that I have accommodations, and usually my professors know your name in Iona since your average class size is like 21. So it's pretty easy. And then after I do my accommodations, I go to the Rudin Center where I sit it there. And then yeah, that's
Take the
pretty
test.
much it. Yeah, and take the test, yeah.
Nice. Katie, what about you? What's it like at Villanova?
Yeah, so I definitely think at Villanova and like many other schools I toured, they make it very easy. I feel like for you to submit accommodations. So as soon as I was accepted and I knew that's where I was going, I did look on the learning support services. That's what we call our program there. And I then submitted my accommodations to where later I had a one-on-one meeting with one of the people who work in the office of the learning services. And so we discussed my accommodations, and then from there, they got approved, and they have been approved throughout my time at Villanova. And just each semester, I have to go back into the website and request the accommodations for my new classes with my new professors. So then each of my professors will get an email stating what accommodations I have, and then they will approve those. And like Sophia said, I normally always go to them and state what accommodations I have and like how I can best utilize them in the class. And so, for example, like last semester, I had a professor who would share her lecture slides with me after class. And so it was nice just to have that extra support just to make sure I knew I had all the notes with me. And so I think just getting like those type of accommodations was definitely very helpful for my academic success. And again, with like if you have like flex settings or extra times, teachers are aware of that. So it's just making sure that they are aware that you are going to take the test in a different classroom. So then they know to bring the test to the learning office. And so they have that, they're aware. You're not just telling them, you're not just like showing up there because maybe a test won't get delivered or something. So making sure they're always aware of that, I think, is also very important. And then with my accommodations as well at Villanova, they, similar to what we were talking about in the presentation slide, they have a learning support services office where you can meet one-on-one with somebody and kind of, I did this during my freshman year because I found it to be very helpful just with that transition with classes and just a new schedule. I met with somebody in the office once a week, and we went through how to like best utilize my accommodations and also just kind of like how to schedule out my time with academics and everything. So I found that just if you need help with like planning, they're there, even not with just like academic support, but they're also there to help you like succeed with like planning and strategizing how to best utilize like, your time with those types of things.
Awesome. So there's a question in the chat about, I guess, like just the renewal. And Ava, I see you raising your hand. I don't know how to get you on camera. So I do appreciate your enthusiasm and I appreciate you joining, and I'd love to see you in person. I hope you're well. I just don't know how to get you to speak. But to the other question in the chat about renewing accommodations. So Katie, you have to reapply or just auto renews?
So my accommodations are automatically, they automatically go to the next semester. However, I do just have to, I have to confirm like my new teachers. It's very simple. So like when you go into the, just like depending on where you end up going, what type of like website they're using, if I just go into the learning support system at Villanova, I can then just, it's very simple. I just check off, it will have my classes and my professors, just like the classes that you have, they'll have them listed. And I check off each class that I want to have accommodations for. And then you can also check off each accommodation that you want to have for that particular class. So if you know you're in a class that maybe it doesn't have tests, maybe it's a paper-based class, then if you have like flex settings for tests, you don't have to submit that accommodation for that class because it wouldn't be necessary. So it's very simple. I just have to, before each semester starts, it's just very important that I go in and just make sure that I check off what accommodations I want for each class. So then that way my teachers receive an email as soon as possible. So they are aware of that.
Sounds good. And Kian, I can't even, I'm getting old. Kian, this is your second year in college or first year in college?
This is my first year. I'm going to my second semester.
Right. So you're probably, do you know if yours just auto roll over to next year? Or have you gotten that far?
I have to email them, but they pretty much, they auto renewal, but I have to email them. So
Okay.
I'll future.
Okay. We might have lost Sophia, so but it sounds like she definitely has some steps to take from year to year. All right, so we're going to transition to the parents, but first, for Kian and Katie, we'll start with Kian. If there are any students out there, like what type of suggestions or advice would you give them as they sort of think about applying to college, or if they're seniors and maybe they know where they're going or they're waiting on where they're going, like about, you know, the next chapter of their lives?
For applying to college, you could apply to many colleges as you want. You want to apply to colleges that you feel is perfect for you, or like based on your major. You want to apply to your best schools, but no matter what school, most colleges are pretty good depending on level. It's all about where you want to actually go and see where yourself in the future.
Awesome. Katie, what about you, thinking back to the junior year Katie Formato or senior year Katie Formato? What advice would you share?
I would say, I know it's like January, so if, like you don't know where you're going yet, like definitely don't stress out about it because it always works out. And there's so much time left that it's not, you don't have to rush. And I think that like taking your time with this process and is very important. And just with accommodations, definitely just looking into schools and seeing what type of accommodations they provide that you know will help you academically succeed. I know that the support that I received at Villanova just through academics and with the resources that they have on campus as well has definitely helped me succeed just with like a writing center and a math center, just gaining that extra support. And also if colleges have that support, definitely utilize it to the best of your advantage because it's there for you and it's there for you to use. And a lot of teachers really appreciate if you do go. So definitely utilize those resources as much as you can because they really help make a difference and they really will help you succeed and it will help you just gain more confidence when you're getting ready to hand in a paper or getting ready for a test.
Great advice. Sophie, I'm not sure if you heard, but I was just like closing thoughts in terms of advice to the juniors or seniors in the audience, potentially even their parents as they think about college. Any wise words that you want to share?
I think that if you have like a dream school or a set place that you want to go to and you don't even get in the first time, you can transfer. It's not that hard. Also just finding your place. I think that when you tour school, you should like really feel like you want to go here and that it's the people and the location and the classes and you're literally going to be there every single day, all day. You're going to be living there. I'm sorry, I'm in a really loud place. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
We can hear
But,
you. We can also hear the other people in there, but it's okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's okay.
But yeah, transferring is an option and just finding a place that you feel like comfortable and safe and somewhere where they will accept like your whatever you have, like your 504. You should be able to freely talk about it and get those accommodations because like everyone else said, it's really important. But yeah.
Thank you very much for all three of you for taking time. I know it's your vacation. It's, 8 o'clock. I mean, there's probably not much to do on a rainy Tuesday, but we do appreciate you contributing and, paying it forward. Thank you all very much. So now that comes to the parents' role and process and perspective. Vanessa, it looks like you are ready to jump in. So maybe you just want to share like the ages of your college going and college bound children and whatever else is on your mind that you want to share with us.
Sure. So I have Killian, who is at Marist in the Learning Support Program. He's just finished his first semester, going back to school next week. And then Angus has just been accepted to RIT Film School, and he'll be starting there in the fall. And that's also a school, part of the film school is going to be the National Technical Institute for the Deaf. So they will have accommodations to help him navigate his classes and his studies given his hearing loss. And so Killian applied to the Learning Support Program at Marist. And as you said, as Lauren said, the Learning Support Program allows him to meet with an advisor twice a week. And really it's kind of a check-in for what's coming ahead, and his advisor helped him to pick classes that might be good for him in terms of class size and teachers that were sort of forgiving and accommodating and interesting to listen to. So she was helpful in that respect. I did find that for Marist, they are kind of old school in that they like everything via paper. So there's no snazzy app like Kian was talking about, or any kind of rollover for accommodations. You pretty much start each semester, even though they have all of his supporting documentation, it's still very much that he has to go and advocate. And I think that was the biggest stumbling block for us. And I say us because I was involved in helping Killian sort of over the course of the semester, meaning that I thought a lot more information would be transferred from the Office of Accommodations to the professors without the students having to do that, but that's not the case. He was really expected to go and speak about his learning differences and his hearing loss to each of the professors, which he felt was a bit daunting as a new student. So I think that was a stumbling block for him. I think because it was not so automated and the teachers did not have a kind of list knowing that he was coming along. I think that was difficult. So I think it just depends on each school and what their system is. They are very much careful of privacy of the students, as all schools are, but they had said to him that they can't tell the professors about his diagnosis or his learning differences. So, which I understand, but it's just something to be aware of as you go off to school or as you send your child off to school, that day one, they have to advocate for themselves. And sometimes that's tricky.
And just out of curiosity, and I think it also helps some of the other parents, what about communication from that support program to you? You're laughing, so I'm guessing there might be very little, but what's
I fell into the trap of not being able to communicate with the school. I thought that I had dotted the I's and crossed the T's and filled out all the forms that would allow me to speak with the school if something was going wrong. I did all the medical ones and I did all of the ones that were through the registrar, but there was one form that allowed, or that should have allowed, his advisor to contact me, which was not a form that I received. And it was a form that Killian was given the first day of school. And I think, perhaps the first day of school and the craziness, and you're kind of signing a lot of stuff, it got kind of thrown under the rug, and I was not contacted by his advisor when things were going a little bit rocky. And it wasn't until Killian came home for a weekend and we were talking about it, and I said, I'm not hearing from your advisor. And he's like, oh, I signed a form that says that you can't. And so that there was the light bulb. But I think schools are very, very protective of students, as they should be. And I think it's just a little bit difficult to navigate, and it's not something that we're used to when you can run in to go see Aaron, or you can go in to see any of your advisors and just talk freely. And it's a different situation for college. So I think there are a lot of forms that you want to make sure that you sign that allow you to have that communication, because some schools allow parents to sign into portals so that you can see the grades, and then other schools do not. So Marist parents are not allowed to sign in to the portal, and they're not allowed to even use their children's sign in because there's a firewall. So, and if the school finds out that you're signing in from outside of the university, the account is shut down. So it's important to know all of the details, and it's important that you should be able to get the information from the registrar about your grades, because kids don't always tell their parents their grades.
Yes, this is true. Neve, let's bring you in. Let's take it in a different direction though. So, you've been familiar with the special education services and departments, at Bronxville School for quite some time. So when you, as Kian's parent, started to talk about college, like, what was on your mind? What were your thoughts? What were you thinking about as you had meetings with your child's counselor, who happened to be me, but when we had meetings about college, research, and when you went out to visit schools, like, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think number one, the most important thing is when you have a child who has a 504 or an IEP, the academic supports, to me, were the most important, because that's what allows Kian to succeed in Bronxville, was the level of support that he got, right? From the resource room or from speech or whatever kind of services your child needs. So I would say to parents, don't fool yourself. Bronxville offers a lot of support. And we forget that it's a very, it's a small nurturing environment. And suddenly you throw your kid into a larger environment where they don't know anyone. And, they are their own best advocate, right? So you've got to make sure that they can advocate for themselves right now. Don't be sending emails on their behalf. Let them send the emails, right? Maybe you can prompt them to send the emails, but make sure it comes from them. And maybe you have to prompt them to respond to the emails, but you have to start that now. Because it's amazing what falls through the cracks. Let's say for Kian at Iona, they offered in the first semester, they offer a social pragmatic program. And a little bit like Vanessa, I presumed that he'd signed up for it. And because, he was told about it, you sign up, and didn't sign up in time. So learned that, he's now signed up for the second semester. So again, I think it's, you send them out there hoping for the best, and things are going to happen, unfortunately. Parents, we still have to be in the background kind of prompting. Did you sign up for this? Did you go and see your professor? All those things are suddenly not going to disappear, right? They're not going to be a new kid leaving high school and going into college. They're going to, transform during the summer. Guess what? It's the same kid in September. So I think it's that parents have to go in with their eyes wide open. So then that they're not, the rug isn't pulled out from underneath them. I would say, if I had to give some advice also, a couple of things I did write down. I found it helpful, the last 2 summers before Kian applied to college. So that was in his sophomore and junior year. He did a 2-week college, class. Doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter what you do. But I think those experiences are very important for our children. It just makes them feel a lot, it just makes them a little bit, it gives them more exposure, and it makes them feel, better going into college, that they had that experience. So definitely consider that for the sophomore and junior years. Also, I think the size of the college is very important. Again, Bronxville is a small nurturing place. Throwing your kid into a college, with a medium size, even with 6, 8, 10,000 people, didn't work for Kian. He applied to a lot of colleges, probably too many. He applied to 17. I know, crazy. It is crazy. And he got into 15 colleges. So I would recommend, don't apply to more than 10 or 12 max. I would say 10, but make sure that those are colleges. Don't apply to colleges your child does not want to go to, right? Every college you apply to, your child has to want to go to that college, and it has to be the right fit for them. And this is where parents, you kind of have to ignore all the background noise where maybe other students are going. And even though Kian got into colleges that might have been more academically challenging, in the end, Iona was the best fit for him, right? Because I thought the smaller class sizes, the academic support, again, we were trying to decide. Marist was another great fit. So we had a lot of we had a number of options. So, follow your child's lead, but maybe I'm one of those parents where I'm like, yeah, we still know what's best for those children. I'm sorry, but we do.
All right, good advice. Vanessa, we're approaching an hour here. Advice, other thoughts that you want to share? I know you've just gone through it twice in 2 years, so you probably could write a book.
No, I think it's just, as Neve said, you want to look at schools that are going to support the child that you have, because 60 days after graduation is when they go off to school, and it's not a different child. And as Neve also said, there's a lot of support in Bronxville, and there will be different support, most likely less, but there are more responsibilities, and these students still need to have the support when they get there. So whether that's checking in with somebody weekly, or if that's having access to a writing center, or a math tutor, or a science tutor, I think all of those things are crucial. And I think it's really important to find out all of that information as part of the tour, as part of the process. And as Neve also said, making sure that your child is learning how to advocate for themselves from day one, because there's not a transfer of power from Bronxville to the college. They don't send it with a manual. And the kids have to do it themselves, and sometimes it's a little bit painful figuring out where to go and who to speak to and how do I do this. So it is hard. So I do think it's important that there is an Office of Accommodations or accessibility that is going to be willing to listen to all of those things, as well as being able to think outside the box a little bit in terms of accommodations. It's not just extra time. It's not just flex setting. There's technology. There are note-taking apps and note-taking services and all of those things that may have been offered here at Bronxville. Those are important things for children as well. So there are so many things that the universities have at their fingertips that you wouldn't even think of. So it's important to have a good relationship with the advisors so that some of those things can come about.
Yeah, good point. So anything that you since learned that, you would share with parents that you would do differently, or something that sticks out to you, like, oh, if I'd known that, 3-4 years ago.
I think the knowing about learning support programs is not mainstream. So I think perhaps there's a panic that, oh my gosh, there isn't going to be somewhere where my child will be able to be supported. And things like these panels are good, to know about Marist, or to know about Manhattanville, or to, all of these schools, or many of these schools, have these programs. And so it's just important to speak to people and to find out about them, so that you can know that your child is not going to just be thrown into the ocean. There are stepping stones to getting there. And that's the whole point, is that you're not just dropping them off at school, but you're dropping them off at a place where there's going to be support, and that that they're going to be appreciated, accommodated, understood, listened to, and where they can thrive.
Yeah, and it actually goes to Michelle. I think it was Michelle's point, or question, I should say. The first meeting at Marist, or maybe it was over Zoom. You were a part of that with Killian. Is that? She's asking if parents are able to go to that, like, kind of first.
We weren't, but part of Killian applying to the learning support program was a parent interview. So I had to go up to campus and be interviewed by the learning support director, because they want to make sure that the family is sort of on board with the child being an advocate, and that they are owning their diagnosis or whatever it is. And that also that the family is on board. So I was able to speak with them then, but I did not speak with his advisor once he went to school and met with her. I did, however, go up in the middle of the semester once we've signed those forms.
Perfect. And I think some of that will change depending upon the school and the program. Neve, what about you when, so Kian submitted all the paperwork, and sounds like he had an initial meeting. Were you part of that meeting, or was that?
No.
No, it was just.
No, you're not. No, I was never part of any meeting with Iona. He also is part of the route. So he didn't get, you have an option of getting more support, academic support. So Kian chose not to. He said he just wanted extended time, separate test location if necessary. So academically, he's been doing quite well. So the level of support he's getting right now is working so far. So I had nothing to do with that. Again, I was In high school, I made sure that Cian advocated for himself. Again, that doesn't mean to say that every now and again I wouldn't say, did you email, did you reach out, did you follow up with this and that? Our kids need a little bit more, some verbal prompts to follow up with things. So yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a bit of a shock to parents how hands off it is.
It is.
So I think that kind of brings us to the end here. I'll just sort of kind of give it a few long pauses to see if any other questions come through. Just again, to plug Bold, if you want to get involved, to contact Neve, or you can contact me and I can put you in touch with her. There's a lot of programming. I think even tomorrow something's happening. Bold has been an awesome partner with the school and does a tremendous amount of work to bring together families of students who have accommodations or learning differences. I don't see any other questions coming through. Again, I want to thank the students okay, so we lost Sophia, but Katie, thank you so much. Cian, thank you so much. It was so nice to see the two of you. Enjoy the rest of your break and much success for the upcoming semester. And Vanessa, please share with Killian the same sentiments. Maybe a question came through. Sorry. Okay, great advice. Yes. So I think that wraps it up from us. We will get the recording and I'll pass it along, Neve, to you at some point tomorrow, and the slides, and we'll get it out to the community at large. Thank you all for your time and flexibility. Seems like the rain's not too bad, but hope everybody stays dry overnight. Good night. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.